Dirt and grime, product of all big cities throughout the entire world. Times Square is no exception. No matter how many times a day they might clean it, there's still that dirt and grime from just normal wear and tear in the elements and so on. Looking throughout this scene, we'll see a lot of places where we see some dirt and grime, like right here in this lamppost. We'll go in there real close and you see there's a little dirt built up coming down from the edges of the sign there. The sidewalk, like right here. We're getting real close, right into this sidewalk area. There you see some dirt and grime, some litter, little rough spots up here. And maybe go way up on top here, like we'll look just like right up in here. And we'll get real close into this area here. You see that there's some dirt and grime, little drips coming down from that pole. Dirt everywhere. Clean as much as you want, but it'll always get dirty again. Creating dirt and grime is real easy in Photoshop. I know there are people out there who will say dirt and grime is real easy to create normally, but when you're trying to paint this stuff, it gets a little more complicated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use an existing brush. I'm not going to create a brush. I'm going to use one of the brushes that come with Photoshop, which is right here, these spatter brushes. All these brushes right here are perfect for dirt and grime, as well as rust, another damage of wear and tear. I'm going to choose the largest one right now so you can see how it's going to work. I'm going to set this up to black, and there you can see that it just creates a streak, just like that. Let me undo that and go over to my brushes panel where I'm going to modify this brush so it's going to give me the effect of the dirt and grime that I want. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the spacing. I'm going to push that up so that we can see the individual tips. And you can see that there's all the individual tips. There they are. Just close them up a little bit. And it does have a bit of a pattern in it. It almost looks like a little caterpillar. And that's what it's creating. See, it's kind of grimy, but it's very pattern-like. It's too perfect. That's because all the tips are pointing in the exact same direction. So the next thing we have to do is change that by going down into our shape dynamics here, where it's got some presets. Let's turn these off for now. And the size jitter. I'm going to generate a size jitter going all the way to 100% and set up a minimum so they don't get too small. So now you can see that each tip is a different size, and the angle jitter is also set to 100%. Right now, I brought it back to 0 where they're all facing the same direction, but by moving the angle jitter, they're all going into different angles so that each tip is different in size and angle from its neighbors on either side, which starts to give us the randomness that you see here, which is much better for creating the dirt effect that we want to have. Now, right there by itself is enough. You could go in there and scatter, but that starts getting a little too uncontrollable, so we won't use scattering in this case. Now, in a layer, I'll start to create my dirt. Now, I usually work with a brush with a low opacity. I'm going to bring it down to about 30% so I can slowly start to build up the dirt and make it a little darker if I want as I'm working. See? Just like that. And I start to add it in layers as I go. Sometimes I'll get a really big brush and bring the opacity way down so I could just kind of throw a couple little edges along the sides like that, which start to add a little extra dirt along the edges. Now, I can go in there and let's say it's not just soot, maybe it's a little grime from other sources. So I'm going to introduce a second color. I'm going to get a light gray, about like that, right there. So now I have this black with the gray. So going to my brush engine, I'm going to go in here and say, give me the color dynamics, where I have the foreground and background pushed all the way to 100%. And I'm going to bring the hue back to 0. I don't want anything on these others. And now that I've introduced this other color, let's bring it back down and go back to that 30%. And I start to draw. In fact, let's go to 100% so we can really see the difference. Now we can see that as I apply the stroke, you can see that there's a little variation going on there of the gray and the black, giving me a much deeper type of dirt than this plain sooty looking dirt that we have here. Now, when it comes to things like rust, I'm going to create another layer for our rust. And here, I can use the same brush that I used here, but it's just a question of the colors. I'm going to choose for my foreground color a very nice orange about like that, kind of a bright orange. And then for my background color, I'll pick a deep brown, about like that. And right there, those two are going to give me the rust that I want. Let's make sure that our settings are, okay, we got the size jitter set, and in the color dynamics, we have it to foreground and background, so that's all the way we want it. So now I'll start to draw in here, and you can see as it's going back and forth between the two colors, I'm getting a nice rusty effect. So we'll just draw a couple of little pieces right here. It's getting some rust and so on. After we've done this, we can do a few other things to make it look even more rusty by going in there and perhaps giving it a filter. So I'll go in there, and it could be noise, depending on the resolution you're working at. Much lower amount of noise, just enough noise right there like that. Or maybe you want to give it a little rougher texture. So we'll go in there and do something like, say, texturizer. Set to sandstone mode, and we'll bring down the scaling a bit and push up that relief a little, just like that. And there you can see that our rust starts to have a more realistic look. Now, let's just make believe that this rust is underneath this white paint here that's got dirt on it, and it's underneath because it's eaten away as the surface paint here. So to get that effect, I'm just going to go into my layer styles for that layer with the rust, and I'm going to give that an inner shadow, which I'm going to choke it so it gets really tight, bring down the size a bit. Let's just make it a 1, and the distance just a little bit more right there like that. And we'll push this up a bit and click OK, and there we can see that now we start to have this little edge along there, which starts to give it the feeling that this rust has eaten away at the white paint, exposing this rust metal down below. So there we can see that we have this very damaged white wall that has soot, grime, and rust eating away through it.